Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Figma for EDU monthly workshop. My name is Miggy. I'm joined by Alex. Alex, want to say hi?
Hey everyone, happy Friday.
So, without further ado, we're going to get started. Once again, this is a prototyping deep dive in Figma. I'm going to give you a quick walkthrough of this file, a quick introduction to what we're going to be talking about. We're going to do a quick intro on prototyping, what it is within the scope of Figma design. I'm going to talk about sequencing interactions. We're going to talk about interactive components. We're going to talk about controlling interactive components with variables. So you can see this is going to be a level up from other prototyping workshops. And then I'm just going to talk about experimentation and the value that there is of experimentation in Figma. Oftentimes, I will post a lot of experiments onto social media, or I do experiments for myself. And those experiments, while are playful, allow me to get a sense of how things work. So in this second file, you'll see I have just some random experiments that you're then able to play and try out and see how they work. So I'm actively kind of creating prototype experiments to test out those ideas. So part of today's workshop is to encourage you all to experiment. Not everything needs to be practical. Sometimes you just need to test out an idea and see what that leads to. And I'm going to kind of show you the ways that I experiment in Figma with prototyping. So without further ado, let's continue on. The first thing that I'm going to show you here is just a simple prototype. Then I'm going to walk through how to some of the prototype basics. Then we're going to dig into interactive components. So here you'll see when I go into prototype mode, right now we are currently in design mode. So this is the Figma canvas. You can see up in the top right, I am currently in design mode. I can swap over to prototype mode. When I go into prototype mode on my canvas, I will see these little connectors. We call them noodles in between these frames. What that's doing is it's instructing through interactions how to go from one to the next. I'm going to play this prototype here, and we're going to kind of walk through what's happening. So you see I have a globe. When I click on it, it opens up, and there's actually a few steps that kind of take place. I'm going to click right here. I'm going to choose follow prototype. And you can see that when I click, it's navigating across these respective frames. So we're going to create prototypes across frames. There are no prototypes without frames in Figma. I'm going to walk you through the interactions that you can use. And then we're going to talk about sequencing and how to create that sense of sequencing that you have in Figma. So this is going to be our first example that we're going to work with. We're going to start simple. Oftentimes, when I experiment with prototypes in Figma, I start with basic shapes. I start with primitives, and then I kind of build upon that idea. So here I have this abstraction of, let's say, like a little circle that's going to open up into a menu. Right now, before I begin to layer and add in a lot of those extra details in the interface, I want to see what that may look like and how I can begin to sequence it. You can see this here on the canvas. When you go into prototype mode, the shortcut key for that is Shift E. So when I press Shift E, you'll see I'm in design mode. Press Shift E, I'm in prototype mode. Shift E, design mode. Shift E, prototype mode. And now that I'm in prototype mode, you will see this little interaction start on this frame. When I drag it away, it goes away. I can select it. I can come over here. You can see flow starting point. I can add a new starting point. It will then give it a name, and I'm going to call this example 1. So when I hit that play button, it's going to preview the prototype for me. And you can see we already have on the canvas some interactions that take us across that sequence. So when I click on this noodle in between those two frames, I can see the trigger, on click, action, navigate to, destination to. That's the name of this frame that we have. And you'll see currently that the animation is instant. That's the type of transition that is taking place. So you'll notice when I click on instant, there's a number of different options available to us here. Dissolve, it's going to cross fade those two frames. Maybe that's not quite what we're looking for. Smart animate is going to look at those two frames and attempt to transition between matching items. So if you have the same item, persisting across multiple frames. The same item exists on each frame. It's named the same. It's going to be able to recognize it. Then what that's going to do, it's going to try to animate certain properties such as width, height, position, color, and we'll see soon enough certain effects can also be transitioned within Figma, which is pretty exciting. I'm going to change this to Smart Animate. And when I do, you're going to see a few different options here. Notice, once again, we're starting off very simple, wireframe sort of drawing out a circle expanding out. It's going to ask us how it's going to animate. So Smart Animate, ease out, and a duration. So I can change that to ease in and out, or I could change that to ease in, depending on the sequence. And I'm going to tell you how to move through this sequence in a meaningful way. I'm going to click that out. I'm going to click play. I'm going to keep this window open. So this is the prototyping preview window. When we're previewing here, we're able to see things on canvas. And once again, as a method of debugging, you can always have it follow the prototype in this settings panel. So when I click through, I'm able to see that interaction. So I'm going to begin by starting from scratch. So if you wish, you could do so as well. I'm going to select this first frame. I'm going to hold down the shift key, select the next frame, hold down the shift key and select the third frame. I'm going to press enter and I'm going to delete them. I'm going to come over here as well. And I'm going to right click and I'm going to select these as well. And I'm going to delete those arrows. Now, when I do that, you notice I begin selecting this arrow first. That will maintain that every other object that I also select will also be an arrow. So when I press delete, it won't delete my frames, but it will delete the arrows. We're going to start off with these 3 frames. And what we're going to do is we're going to create that interaction. The reason I'm doing this is I want to show you how I create that circle and how it's going to transition between those 2 frames. I'm going to press the R key. The R key is the rectangle tool. You might be asking, wait, Mig, I thought you said we were going to use a circle. The reason we're going to use a rectangle is because it's going to allow us to transition the corner radii, those rounded edges, a little bit better and give us much more control from transitioning from a circle to a square. I'm going to hold down the shift key. I'm going to draw a circle in the middle now, or I'm going to draw the rectangle there in the middle. I can set its specific values over here. You'll see the dimensions, the width and the height. We're going to set them both currently to 100 and 100. Now we want to align it within the frame. I can select that object. Notice up here, we're going to align center. It's dead set in the middle of the frame, and that's looking great. Now, what I'm going to do is with that rectangle currently selected, I'm going to come over here to the right. I'm going to choose corner radius and I'm going to drag that value all the way out. Once I do so, you'll notice that what was once a square now appears as a rectangle. And that's because every single one of those edges now have that radius applied. We're going to look over here on the left-hand side. Once again, prototyping, it's very important that you match up your layers with what you see on the canvas and that they remain the same across every frame. We're going to name this, window, right? Because it's going to actually turn into a window. I'm going to copy it. Then I'm going to hold down the shift key and select the next 2 frames. So notice they're both selected. And when I hit paste, it's going to paste into each of those frames respectively. Now, what we're going to do is when we click on this, we want it to first open wide, right? So notice as I'm dragging this, I'm holding down the Option key. If you're on Windows, that's the Alt key. If I don't hold it, it's going to just come in one direction or the other. So I'm going to hold down the Option key, Alt key if you're on Windows, and that's going to extend it from the left and the right. And you'll see I'll be able to extend that out. Just underneath, I can see the value that I'm extending it to. Now, if you wish, you can also come to the dimensions over here in the layout panel and type in a specific value. So I can say 480, and I can see that represented here. And what we're doing is we're going to sequence this animation. So here we're going to have its final output. So select that. We're going to set that width to 480. You notice that it's not currently centered. That's okay. We can align it to the center. We're having control over its placement. Now, what I can do is I can extend that vertically as well. I'm going to hold down the Option key. I'm going to extend that vertically. And what we can do here as well is make sure that we have the size that we want. So as I'm extending this, I'm going to select that height field and press 480. And once again, center. So what we're planning on doing here is we don't just want to animate from the circle to the square, because we want to consider how that might come in. We want it to first grow wide, then we want it to grow tall. And we also want to think about how that movement is going to take place. I'm going to select prototype. And actually what I'm going to do here too, I'm going to change. No, you know what? Yeah, let's just go right into prototype mode. Once again, Shift E. We're going to select this first frame. We're going to drag the noodle from the first frame to the second one. Now, this can be whatever you want to click on to select it. So notice I started by dragging it from the frame. That means that the whole frame will accept the click. That's not exactly what we want. I want the object to select the click. In the same way that this example, when we clicked on the circle, right, that triggered the interaction. I want the circle to trigger the interaction. Here's the interaction as it's playing out. So the trigger, you'll see that there's actually a number of different triggers as well. So there's on click, on drag, while hovering, while pressing, key gamepad, mouse enter, mouse leave, mouse down, mouse up, and after delay. We're going to just focus on the on click for now. All of these other triggers have their own unique special circumstance. They're different ways that you interact with objects that can then set off the interaction. We're going to start with on click. We're going to choose navigate to. You'll see that there's a bunch of other options. One of the options that we're going to talk about later is going to be set variable. We're just going to use navigate to for now. So we're going to navigate to that second frame. And here we definitely want Smart Animate because we have the same object persisting across multiple frames. You'll notice that when I go back into prototyping mode, I'm going to highlight it. In the subsequent frames, we're going to see the matching layers also be highlighted. This easing curve, now, if you've watched me before, I'm always talking about ease in and out. Now, since we're going to be a two-part animation, we want it just to ease in at first, and then it's going to ease out in the second half. So we're going to choose an ease in curve for this transaction. So once again, if I close out, I click on that arrow, on click, we're going to navigate to that second one. We're going to choose Smart Animate. We're going to ease in to begin. Now, because I'm picky about my transitions, I'm going to come down to Custom Bezier, and I'm going to exaggerate my ease in. So what we have here is a very simple ease in. It's the default provided by Figma. I'm going to drag this dot over a little bit more to the right to be exaggerated. You'll notice that that impacts this value down here. These four numbers just represent the coordinate of this dot to help create this curve. This is an ease in curve, and that's what we want. I'm actually going to change that value specifically to 0.8, and you'll see that that dot is essentially 80% of the way over. This is going to be a nice ease in transition. There we go. So that's going to be an ease in. Now, the second half of this transition is going to be a little different. We're going to drag it over. And this time, we don't want a click interaction to take place. We want the sequence to continue doing its thing. We want it to continue to move despite us, right? We just want it to do. So what we're going to do in that case is we're going to choose after delay. After delay is basically going to say after a period of time, then we're going to perform this interaction. So the delay, we want it to be instant, right? We could type in 0, but 0 technically doesn't exist, right? You know, it's like this infinitesimal nothing. What we really want is about 1 millisecond. That's going to be the most instantaneous of transition. So we click, we animate to this frame, then we're going to animate, then we're going to wait a period of time. We're going to wait 1 millisecond, and then it's going to jump off to the next frame. So after delay, 1 millisecond, navigate to destination 3, right? We're going to use a Smart Animate. And now here, instead of an ease in, we're going to choose ease out, right? So the first part of the transition is going to ease in. It's starting from a stopped position. It's slowly gaining speed. Then we're going to ease out as it goes to its final resting spot. Not, you know, in a bad way, but just where it's going to end. So after delay, 1 millisecond, navigate to destination, that third frame. We are going to choose ease out. once again, I'm a bit picky. I'm going to set this value out by 0.2. Let's say 0.2 and 1, right? Once again, all these numbers sort of represent is just that point right there, right? So 0.2, 20%, and 1, that's where it ends up. So we can test this out. Let's see if it works. And if it doesn't, we'll troubleshoot and figure it out. When I click, there we go. We can see how it takes place. Let's reset that and let's click it again, right? And we can see how that's opening up. So click, opens, right? And it plays out. Now, in real time, we can begin to troubleshoot how the animation's playing. I'm going to click on both of these arrows. Once again, editing multiple interactions at the same time. I'm going to click, drag down, select. Both of those arrows are selected, and we could take a look at the properties that are the same. So right now, it's taking about 300 milliseconds to get from that first frame to the second frame, then 300 milliseconds to get from the second frame to the third frame. We can alter this value. The larger the value, the slower it'll be. The lower the value, the faster it'll be. So if we wish for this to be a little bit faster, we can type in 250 milliseconds and see how that plays. Now that feels a little bit better. Maybe we want to turn off follow prototype, see how it works, right? So there we go. We have a nice little pop open animation there. Now, another thing that we could do at this last point is let's maybe do an ease in out. I'm going to drag this handle over, right? And so we could do on that second transition, we're going to go 0.80, 0.21. So once again, this handle 0.8, it's 80% and 0. So it's not going up on this curve. This one is going to be 0.2. So it's 20% over and 1. And if you really wanted to, you can overshoot these a little bit and you'll get a little bit of springiness to them. Springiness is an official term. I apologize for all the international folks whose English isn't your first language. And you're like, what is springy? What is Miggy saying, springy? But it's a fake word I just made up. There we go. Yeah, if you blinked, you missed it. So now it opens and it's got a little bit more springiness to it, the springiness. Let's take another look at that. We can see that I have this, what is called an ease in, out, back. So it's kind of like moving out and back. It's not a true spring. There are spring interactions in there, but I like mine a little bit better. Maybe I want to up that just a little bit by 350 milliseconds and see how that looks. Now I'm going to go to the design panel and just change this color here so you can see what this looks like at the very end, how it transitions that final color. Let's go ahead. If you want to preview, you can either go to prototype, come up here and choose preview, or you'll notice that shortcut right there, shift spacebar, that shortcut when you select this frame will also bring up the prototype preview and you can see it now opens up. How cool is that? So once again, it's opening up and it's doing that little transition for us. Let's say too, I wanted as part of this sequencing, I'm going to maybe add like a slightly different color. And we can see how it's transitioning from the first one to where it ends. So we can play that. And it's a lot of fun, right? Pretty basic, but I think that just taking the time to sequence out and think through the steps. One thing that I mentioned, once you have multiple objects in a prototype, so notice when I hover over this, this is going to be a way to troubleshoot your animation. When I hover over this, notice how this one also highlights, right? So hovering over this, this is being highlighted and it's telling me that that sequence is moving all the way across. Okay, so even
Hey,
here,
Miggy, you have a great question in the chat that I think is relevant to what you're talking about right now. So Kel
absolutely.
says, why in some occasions when using the ease in and out animation, some of the elements don't seem to be aligned between the states? Sometimes, for example, an icon inside of a circle seems to move a bit to the left or right when hovering over it.
So an icon moving to the left or right when hovering over it. So it might not necessarily be the ease in out. I would need to take an example to better
Okay,
understand what's taking place. It could either be
cool.
what's being constructed of it or what could be taking places the type of transition. So it could be like scaling that's taking place, right? So one thing to note with Figma is that certain things don't animate well. If I was to try to animate a stroke value, the stroke values don't properly animate or scale well in prototyping. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you're relying on, very simple properties. So if something seems awry, it could just be that the type of property transition that is currently at play might just be stressing the capability within the prototyper. So oftentimes I lean on, Figma's strengths, but sometimes you can like probably brute force the wrong thing. So I wouldn't say that it's technically the ease and out transition, but it could be matter of what it is that you're trying to animate. So sometimes things causing a bit of a shift. If the icon is, let's say, a font icon, sometimes there might be a discrepancy like within the font characters between the frames. So, I mean, that's a good question, but to be fair, like I would need to see that specific use case to give you a good sense of exactly how that would take place.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much, Miggy. Y'all, if you still have questions after this, email us at education@figma.com. I wanted to make sure you got to that question, Migs, because it was gaining some traction in the chat. Back over to
Uh,
you.
Absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, I would need to see that specific example to get a much better sense of like what is taking place there. All right, cool. Oh, okay. Yeah. So using font awesome, that's going to be the thing. So when you're using fonts and if it's like doing something, try consider outlining the font specifically for that transition or think about how it's being positioned. But yeah, the font could, depending on what you're doing to the font, could be causing that issue. So yeah, that's great. All right. So what we're going to do here is so I talked a little bit about sequencing interactions, right? So when you're sequencing things, you know, it has a great impact. I'm looking to see if I had like another sequence in here, but oftentimes people are attempting to transition, one thing and immediately expect the end result. So even in this example, when I hover over any portion of these halves, if I hit Command Y or view outlines, I'll show you. Click right here, go show outlines. When I'm in outline mode, I can get a much better sense of all of the objects. Much of prototyping and demonstrating is going to be a bit of a magic show. Oftentimes, we think exactly what we put there is going to be the output, but you need to kind of like finesse what you're going to be doing to demonstrate. The purpose of a prototype is to test or communicate an idea. And I know now with like sites, there's actually going to be a lot with prototypes being able to be translated directly into that site output. So when you'll see when I hover here and I'm in prototype mode, I can see all of the matching layers between the Smart Animate, and that's going to help you debug if something doesn't seem to be animating correctly. And I'll just show you when something goes wrong. So let's say if this isn't named properly. So if this layer is named Jerry instead, right? When I go into prototype mode and I hover, notice that these layers here are being highlighted, but Jerry is left out in the cold. Jerry's not going to animate properly, right? There's going to be a mistake. You see that mistake that just happened where there's this kind of like crossfade. Figma's trying to do whatever it can to animate that the way that it thinks. But if that layer is named incorrectly, then it's not going to match up. So even if it's named ellipse 7, right, that's enough of a distinction for that layer name to provide the smart animate transition. And also you'll notice like even within the sequencing, sometimes the little details matter, such as just that shadow and what it's communicating to the output. So the next thing we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about interactive components. Interactive components give you the ability to animate multiple things within a single frame or to transition. If you think of a button, if you think of anything that you want something to take place, but within a single frame where you don't have to have multiple frames to sort of determine that given state. I'll show you a quick example with this dot that we have here. You'll see I have 1, 2, 3 frames. I'm going to select them. I'm in design mode. I'm going to come over here right? And if you're working at home and you're following along, feel free to do it with these set of frames as well. But I'm going to select these frames. I'm going to click on the component. I'm going to create a component set, right? So a component set is a way to create an interactive component. What that means is it's kind of like a nested spot interaction that I can add into a larger frame. So I'm going to rename this to, menu dot. And when I add in a new frame, I'm going to press the F key. I'm going to draw on a new frame here. Let's make this like an iPad mini. Let's make it a little bit bigger, iPad Pro. So I have an iPad Pro frame. Now I can copy the first frame of our menu dot and paste it in. I obviously made something way too big. So I'm going to press the K key and I'm going to scale it by 0.5. Right. I'm probably doing things a little bit messy right now, but I'm going to show you how they can still work. So I'm also just using this opportunity to advertise the scale tool, right? I can resize it this way, but you'll see that because it has sensor constraints, it's not actually going to scale. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select this. I'm going to press K. It's going to bring up the scale tool. I'm going to type in 0.5, and then you'll see that it's exactly half of its original size, and the artwork inside each of those frames will be scaled down. So I'm going to call this example. And within here, once again, when you press the K key for scaling, it's going to persist. It's going to exist, right? So you might accidentally scale other stuff. So you might want to make sure you exit that mode by either going to the move tool or by closing out the scale tool here. Another way you could do that is by pressing escape or the V key. So scale mode and regular selection tool, two different things. So I'm going to duplicate this, right? You see I have a couple of these dots here, and I'm going to duplicate this down. And once again, the reason that I'm using this sort of simplicity of the interaction here is start simple and then add complexity. Don't make a truly complex component to begin if you're testing out a new interaction or experimenting with an idea. I'm going to preview this plane right here. And you'll see when I click on them, right, they're opening up. Now, as I'm clicking on that, right, each of those nested interactions exists within that same page, right? And so let's say I want to click on these to then close them out and start over, right? We still have our interactive component here. We can add in some additional frames to show how it closes out. So I'm going to click right here. I'm going to add plus, right? So we have another frame. And what we can do here is we can, think about how might this close. So I can hold down the option key, right? I'm going to close that out. We're going to take a look. What was the height of this one? This one was a height of 100, right? So we're going to set its width as 100. There we go, right? We're going to close this out. Let's have it close out with that purple. And then let's add in, like our last frame, which is, or all we need to do is transition back to this last one. I'm going to go to prototype mode. And in prototype mode, we can see that we have this interaction, but we want a click on this rectangle here, right? So we're clicking on the rectangle, and we're going to change to variant 4. When you're working inside of interactive components, the action changes. So it's not a navigate to, but a change to, because it's swapping the variant component. We're going to talk about that next when we just talk about controlling an interactive component with variables. So we're going to change to variant 4. Right? So you could see that all of these are named except for the fourth one. We can go back and rename that so it's proper, right? It's going to change to variant 4. Let's just kind of simplify our interaction a little bit, right? Let's just use like an ease in, ease out. If you want to type in manual variables, I'm going to say 0.8, comma 0, comma 0.2, comma 1, right? That's what I call the Miggy ease right there. That's my favorite type of ease in out. So it's going to transition. So on click, it's going to transition to this frame. We're sequencing again, but now we're sequencing inside of this encapsulated component. We're going to animate that back out. How cool is that? Now I'm going to have this one go all the way back to the beginning, and we don't want something to trigger it, right? So by default, when we create that interaction, it's going to choose on click. We don't want that. We're going to say after delay. So after delay, right? We're going to do it instant. So even if we type in 0, it'll be 1 millisecond. We're going to change back to that first instance, right? The first frame. We're going to smart animate, and we have our let's like let's have like a nice little, like we could do an ease out right there, right? Cool. So now we have this, and this could even be 250 milliseconds. So the timing is going to be something that you're going to want to tweak as you're beginning to adjust this. And if you're thinking about communicating these interactions to a developer, those values, these Bezier curves, can all be translated into CSS. So yeah, the Bezier numbers are just two sets of coordinates. And the Bezier numbers, what they reflect is just these two dots. So 0.2 would be like 0.2. Then the second two dots, let's say I do 0.2 and 1, right? It's 0.2 and 1. So this Bezier curve just reflects the position of those two dots. And the position of those two dots determines the curve. This is going to be an ease out. This is going to be an ease in, right? So starting from a stop position, gaining momentum. Ease in out means it's starting fast and it slows down. And then an ease in out is like an S curve where it starts from a stop position, gains speed, but then it slows back down. This is the most common type of movement you see within UX design and in real life. And sometimes you start with an ease in and then you'll do an ease out. So ease in, ease out. When in doubt, ease in out. So we're going to just have like an ease out as the final transition. And I'm just going to hit play, and you'll see that it's going to be updated. So now we can actually enable them, right? Turning them on. And then when I click on them, they close out. So what we're doing here is we're thinking about how might we create reusable buttons, interactions, or menus that have like a micro interaction associated with them that you can then kind of, close out, open. And right now we're just within a single frame. So if you were to, have like a starting frame and move into this one. So let's say I'm going to duplicate this frame. I'll show you a fun little trick. So I'm going to press the F key. I'm going to hover over this frame. You'll see these little dots show up on either side. If I want to create a blank frame before this one, right? I'm going to hold down the Option key and click. Now I got a blank frame to start from. I can move this little example starting point over. And what I can do here is, let's say I just want to kick off this interaction. So we're going to like start with like a simple button, right? So we're going to kick off that interaction with a simple button. Let's round out the corners, right? And once again, when I experiment, what I'm doing is I'll start with these simple things and then I begin to add complexity. So this might be our start frame, where when I click, I can navigate to this other frame. So this would be starting, and then you would have your interface. So on click, navigate to this example page. Maybe here we use a like a push transition. We're going to use a ease in and out, right? And we can like preview what that looks like. And because it's a big transition, we can slow it down a little bit to 500 milliseconds. 500 milliseconds going to be about a half second. The other thing that the reason I'm setting up this example is I'm going to talk to y'all about this little state option down here. It's going to have big impact in what we're creating. So I'm going to come over here in the design panel, right? And this is where what is that called? Wireframing. This is wireframing, right? We're testing out an idea. So I'm going to hit play. So we start here, we click, it pushes it, and then now we're here and we're able to create these interactions. If I wish, I can set up another little button to go back. So let's create a very quick, back button. I'm going to use the pencil, just make a little arrow. There we go. We're going to make a arrow. I press the P key. I'm drawing a pencil. Oops. Going to select that. We're going to go to the design panel, increase the width. So I just have this little arrow thing here, right? If I want to round out those corners, we're going to go over to the stroke, do a little rounded join and put in round endpoints. So it looks a little cuter and it matches the rest of our interface. So here, I'm just going to have that go back. And you'll actually see like a lot of the transition still kind of matches here, but maybe we go in the opposite direction. So very quickly, I can like test out my idea where I have this panel that's like opening things up, and then we can go back, right? And the one thing that you'll notice is that right now, this page, even though we're navigating, so I'll follow that prototype, even though we've navigated to this page right here, right? When we navigate back and then go back in there, we still see the current state. It remembers everything. It remembers where everything was. Let's say we wanted to reset every time we go back to that home page. So we can come down here to say set, and we could choose reset component state. So we're going to choose reset component state. You won't see it as an option on a page where they don't show up. So we're going to hit play. So now I enable some components, right? They all just triggered, and we go back. And now when we go back in, it starts it fresh. So this is one of those options that I know a lot of people ask me a lot of questions on. They'll work with interactive components and they're like, wait, they're always keeping their state. I need them to reset when I enter the frame. That's going to be your option, your opportunity to do that. So once again, click, boom, 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 boom. And once again, so this is a component set. The same way that I created it, I'll create it up here. So I kind of like to make my little prototype first, then I'll select them. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to make this into a component set, and I'm going to call this, globe. And so I can copy that first frame of the globe, and I'm going to paste to replace it right there. And once again, I'm going to press the K key. That's the scale tool. Let's scale it down, right? We can kind of match the rest of the size. So now when I preview this, right, we're here and I have that nested interaction right there. And one last thing too, if you want more control over the given state from when it starts, I can select it here and I could change the property that it begins at, right? So I can actually go to step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. So likewise, any of these other interactive components, I could change the current state that it's on, and that should impact how it comes in. So we could see it remembers that it was on that state. So when I click on it, it closes. That one opens up. How cool is that? So once again, yeah, that reset will be found right here. It's in between a frame transition or a frame animation, right? That's where it's going to pop up. So if you're not transitioning into a frame that contains the interactive components, it won't show up. So when I click on this back button interaction and I click on state, it's just asking me if I want to reset the scroll position, which is another factor that it could remember as it's moving through. All right, so what I'm going to do next, we're going to talk briefly about variables and how they can control the interactive components. I've talked previously about variables. This is a concept known as advanced prototyping. I'm going to click back to design mode, press Shift E to navigate back to that space. And by the way, I will be re-releasing this file with all of the completed activities after the workshop. So here, I clicked on this page. I'm going to go to variables. You'll see that I have a variable here. I'm actually going to delete that. Variables in Figma can do a lot of things with prototyping. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a variable. This is going to be a string variable. A string variable just means that it's plain text. And what we're going to do is we're going to ascribe it to the name of an interactive component, right? So here we go, string value. What we're going to do is we're going to title this, current position or cur pose. And we're going to name that value, let's say 1 for now. All right, so current position 1. I could even just say, actually, let's change that. Yeah, let's just go, a little press for time. So I'll just go 1 and we'll show y'all how to work with that. So current position 1. I'm going to create a frame, right? And this frame is going to have an image in it. So I'm going to open this up. I'm going to draw like a little square, right? And we're going to like fill that out. Boom. Just drop in an image. And I'm going to come over here to fill, and we're going to make that an image fill, right? So this is going to be called 1. Right, so I have that first frame 1. Let me darken up my background for those of you in the back so you can see that a little bit better. I'm going to select that frame. I'm going to press Command D. Once again, Command D, Command D. So we have 3 frames now. I'm going to name this one 2, and I'm going to name this one 3. All right, so we have those 3 frames, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to actually change the rectangle names. Let's say if I want to change them all at the same time, I can hold down the Command key, Control key if you're on Windows. I can select them all. I can press Command R. Command R will ask me to rename them all at the same time. So I'm going to name them all, photo, right? So there we go. Yes, Shannon. Command R, you could do that. You could even name them sequentially. So if I did this and hit Command R, I can say photo plus number, and then it'll be photo 1, 2, 3. Voila, photo 1, 2, 3. How cool is that? All right, so we do want them all matching for now. And what we could do here is I'm going to make this into an interactive component. I'm going to select all the frames. I'm going to come over here and create component set. So here's our component set. And so we're going to call this gallery. Within each frame, I'm going to type in a number. So just so we know that this is like, this is the first one, we're going to drop in a big number there. I'm going to hit the K key to scale it. There we go. Big 1, right? I'm going to copy that. Once again, select these 2 at the same time, Command V to paste it. And then this will be 2 and 3, just so we can see that. Right. And so I'm going to create a frame that is going to have one of these instances here, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create buttons that are going to navigate outside of the interactive component. So what we're effectively going to do is change the state of this interactive component using external buttons, right? Let's add in some photos here. So I'm going to go to place image. I'm going to click on the little icon down here, the actions menu. I'm going to type in place image. You're going to see I have a number of different images here. I think I got 3 cat photos. Right. So I'm going to do 1, 2. Oops, I did that on the number. Yes, you can do that on the number. Let me get another one. So I lost the second photo. There you go. So I have 3 cats. Right. And so here, when I go to this property, I could go 1, right? There's 3 and there's 2, right? There's 3 and 1. If I want to change up the arrangement of them, right? I believe I could just move this one down. There we go. So there you go. 1, 2, 3. You can change the name. So that property relates to each one of those. I can create 3 buttons. So let's do a little rounded button there. That's going to be 1. That's going to be 2. That's going to be 3. So what this is going to do is this external button, I'm going to set a variable that's then going to change the state for this instance, right? So we have those 3 names. And so watch this. Once again, when I click on the desktop, I'm going to go to variables. I have a variable named current position with a value of a string of just one. I mean, I can name it like cheetah, jaguar, whatever. Here, this button, I'm going to select it. I'm going to go to prototype mode. I'm going to create an interaction, right? So I can create an interaction over here in this window as well. I'm going to create and add that interaction. And I'm going to on-click it. And then the action. What is the action that I want to do? I don't want to navigate to. What I want to do is I want to set a variable. So I could set a variable. What is the variable? The only variable that we have in our file right now, it's current position. And I'm going to change current position to the string text of 1, right? Because that's the name of this first interactive component. So now to make my life a bit easier, I'm going to come over here to the interactions panel. I'm going to select just to the left of it, and I'm going to hit Command C, Control C if you're on Windows. That's to copy it. And then I can just hit paste and paste it onto those other buttons. Now all I need to do is edit it. I don't have to go through and create the interaction from scratch. I could just change this from 1 to 2. And I can change the third one to 3. Just typing in 3, press enter. It's smart. It knows to put it in quotation marks. So this button is going to make this item go to 1, 2, and 3. Now, the way that it needs to happen, there's one last step. In design mode, when I select the interactive component, there's that property, right? That property lets you switch between all 3 of those states. Over here, when you hover over, there's apply variable. I'm going to apply the variable of current position, right? Which means it's 1. Now, when I click on the canvas, I could change that value. So I could change it from 1 to 2, to 2, and you see it updates. So it's reading whatever this variable currently is. I can change that to 3, right? And I'm going to leave it at 3 for now. So the default is 3. So it's reading the variable. I could extend this out. It's reading the variable current position. Current position is currently set to the word 3. And now when I click on these buttons here, I have 3, 2, 1, 2, 3, right? 1, 2, 3. So what's cool about that is before variables, you didn't really have this opportunity to change states of an interactive component. So likewise, if I was to take this menu dot, someone's asking, please repeat the first step. So basically you click on the canvas, you go to variables. Over here, I set a variable. I created a name called current position or current state. Doesn't matter. If I update it here, it'll update elsewhere. I'll say, current image, right? That's the variable. And then it has a value. That value is whatever is the name of the properties of each one of these components. So when I select this one, this is 1, right? That's 2. And this right here is 3. So if I was to change that to, let's say I edit all of my properties, right? So I go back to the gallery. I click on the whole gallery. I could change their names. So I could change it to cheetah, right? I'm going to call it Sphinx and cat, right? So we got those 3 properties. And what is the name of the property? I'm going to call this, current cat is the name of the property, right? So that makes sense. So current cat is either cheetah, Sphinx, or cat, just regular cat, like, outside cat. And so when I'm setting the prototype buttons, right, basically I'm creating an interaction. Let me delete it entirely. We'll create a new interaction. The interaction's on click. The action that we're going to take place is set variable, and we're going to choose current image. We're setting the current image. So the first one is going to be cheetah, right? And then now the second one, we're just going to edit that one instead of 2, right? So now it's Sphinx, right? Because that's the name of that second variant. And then the third one, we're going to change that to cat, right? And so now when we test it, it should still work, or it doesn't work because I definitely broke something, but that's okay. Let's see right here. The reason it's not working is that the current cat. Oh, I know why. I know why it's not working. We didn't change the first variable. This should be cheetah. There you go. So now it's cheetah. And hopefully I spelled everything correctly. He said I didn't rename my items in my gallery. Should be here. So cheetah, sphinx, and cat. This is what happens when you do live demo, folks. All right, so current cat is cat. Current cat is cheetah. Oh, I got to set the variable again. There we go. Current image cheetah. Now it works. So once again, if I didn't set the variable, then it's not reading the variable. So current image is cheetah. Once again, we can test that by going to the variables panel and rename that. So if I change it to cat, it goes to cat. If I change it to sphinx, it goes to sphinx. Now you all know why I chose 1, 2, and 3. So now when I play this, it should play 1, 2, 3. Awesome. All right. So I have a few experiments in my file that you all have downloaded, right? I have a grid animation of thank you using the new grid option. So if you take a look here, all I'm doing is I'm animating between two grid states. So if I have a frame and I make that a grid and I have another frame, by dropping in just with like a rectangle, right? I could drop in those same rectangles. Watch this. If I hold on the option key, they'll just all drag over into their spots. So what I'm doing to animate this is animating the gap and the padding. So when I animate between these two frames, so I'm going to draw like a little frame here. And let's put in another frame. Once again, press the F key, hover, hold on the option, and boom, you got another frame. And I'm going to paste this in here. Sorry, I know I'm going through this one a little bit fast, but we have two frames. As long as they match, right, that they're all the same. So if I select this one, I'm going to call this my grid, and I'm going to call this one my grid. And when we go to prototype mode, when we hover over each of these objects, we see that they're aligning properly, right? So when I prototype Smart Animate between them, on click, let's do Smart Animate between them. It's going to find those and it's going to transition between them. So when I click, right, it's kind of cool. And the way that I experiment and kind of move is, I'll do something like, let's rotate that. Let's see what that looks like. Oops. Let's rotate that. Let's see what that looks like. Now we're cooking. Now we're beginning to play around here. I can kind of move this up and even like, adjust the properties in between those two states. And I could see how they're animating. So the one cool thing is that grid frames will animate. And then I'll show y'all this last example. Once again, this is another sequence. What I'm animating here is in Figma Draw, there is a new layer, and that layer is called a layer blur, right? So it's a progressive blur. And what you could do is you could change the position of the progressive blur. So currently I'm using progressive blur and texture, and it's getting this really cool effect. Now, what I'm doing between each frame, I'm just changing the position of the progressive blur. So I'm starting horizontally, I'm going vertically, right? Going here, back, horizontally on the other side, and then vertically. And what's great is when I select that frame and I preview the animation, right? It all plays out. You're able to see how that blur and that texture is applying. So if you're unsure of how something animates in Figma, try it out. I had no idea that this would work, but I like to experiment. And sometimes it might not have a practical application when you first begin, but as you continue to work, you will find further practical applications. Now, you might even question whether or not that texture, can be achieved in code. And I'm here to tell you that this is actually an SVG filter. It's a like almost like a shader, the way that it's built. So yes, this texture can translate into like an SVG graphic. A lot of the new draw features do have their origins in code, and I mean they're coded here. So there's a lot to play around with. Check out the draw deep dive on Figma, and we will be having another Figma for EDU workshop in the near future. It's right now, I think it's called Vector Illustration, but we're going to do a deep dive into Draw for EDU so y'all can better understand how to use those tool sets. Alex, how you doing?
We're great. We got three questions over here for you for the three questions for you today, Miggy. I'm also dropping in a chat a place to RSVP for that workshop that Miggy was just talking about around vector illustration. Back to you, Migs.
All right, awesome. So here we go. I'm on a prototype phase at work now, and I have a question. What is the best way in the same prototype flow to show when I hover over a button, press showing different states, and then make it go to the next screen when I click on it? So I'm probably gonna have to dig into this and make an example. There's a lot to unpack here, but effectively you can have hover transitions like in the interactive component, and then when you're building that out you can like override some of the nested transitions. It's not like always obvious depending on how it is that you're building this, but when you have an interactive component and then you are also kind of like working here. So if I come into design mode and I go into prototyping mode, so many modes in Figma. Um, you you can see variant interactions here. So I can actually undo a current interaction, like a sub interaction, because you can't have like multiple clicks on an object. So you can actually remove interactions on a sub interaction and then start to sequence out how that works. So that's actually a really fantastic question. And like happy to make some additional content on that. I have screen recorded hi-fi prototype interactions using Microsoft Edge and Windows in the past, but it refused to record the working prototype for case study. I had no trouble in Dream, which was okay. Is there a better way or plugin that it could work? So the screen recordings I typically use, I use a Mac's native screen recording, or I use this program called Clean Shot for Mac. I'm unfamiliar with some of the Windows screen recording tools, so kind of forgive my ignorance there. But for screen recording my interactions, my favorite is Clean Shot for Mac. It's really good in that it like snaps to edges, so it makes it a lot easier to like get in and record a prototype. So that is kind of like my preferred method for recording prototypes is going to be Clean Shot. It's going to give me the best tool for that. So my question is Figma's prototype mode. When a user scrolls down as they would on a website, is there a way to reveal on scroll animations or any alternative method? So one thing that I have done for this is kind of have like a on enter or like a hover. Right now we don't have what is known as drivers. So in other prototyping applications, one that I used to use is called Principal. It would actually track your current scroll position and then drive or trigger an animation. So right now, I know that in Figma sites that there's going to be an opportunity to kind of prototype those out into like a real site. Currently in prototyping, we don't yet have it. It's on our radar. We're aware that that's something that people want to do. But yeah, the trick that I usually have is I have some kind of like invisible like hover state, or while hovering, that when I scroll, then I like move my mouse to hover on it, and then it performs the transition. And then when I remove, because it's while hovering, when I'm no longer hovering on it, it'll then go back to its original state. So depending on the type of interaction that I'm using, what I do is I kind of use the tools at my disposal to best simulate it without currently just making it outright. But that is a fantastic question, and something that's definitely, like on Figma's like roadmap with prototyping. We recognize that, not all the features are there. Every tool is going to have its own prototyping methods, but we're continuously working on making sure that the tool has the things that folks need to make the prototypes that they want. All right. So cheers. Thank you, everybody. Alex, you want to close us out?
Absolutely. So in the chat, I'm about to drop the invitation to our next monthly workshop, which is happening on Friday, June 13th. We'd love to see you there. I would also ask if you had any opinions or feedback about this session that you jump into that feedback form and let us know. This gives us ideas about how to make these better for you in the future, and it gives us ideas for topics for future workshops. We actually make those up straight from your feedback. So if you have ideas, you have requests, please jump into that forum. We would love to hear from you. And thank you so much for being here today. Cheers.
Thank you.
Awesome. Have a great weekend, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.